Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 10th. My name is Alan, and I want to welcome you to my Spiritual Growth Through Recovery podcast. Um, Purpose of these videos is to grow my spirituality by following the AA program of recovery, and I do that by being honest, vulnerable, and accountable, which is why I make the videos. I'm no expert in AA or spirituality or recovery, just sharing my experience as I try to live life on life's terms and do it sober. All right, so the recipe we follow here is we read the daily reading out of the AA Daily Reflections book. So link in the description if you'd like to follow along. And I'll just share my take on the reading and usually some other topic that seems relevant. So, all right, cool. All right, so we're going to get busy here. So the topic for today is going to be free at last and the idea of freedom. May 10th. Free at last. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. It amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 58. I knew deep inside that if I were to ever be joyous, happy, and free, I had to share my past life with some other individual. The joy and relief I experienced after doing so were beyond description. Almost immediately after taking the fifth step, I felt freedom from the bondage of self and the bondage of alcohol. That freedom remains after 36 years, a day at a time. I found that God could do for me what I couldn't do for myself. Free. Isn't that what we all want to be? Free? Freedom from taxes and death or whatever, right? There's always some kind of freedom. So I guess what I took here was talking about so the definition of humility here was, I really like this here, a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. So I think it's fair to analyze and evaluate who we are. Don't beat ourselves up and just move forward, right? Clear up the wreckage of the past so we can move forward. Talking about how sharing this with another individual, or we'd never be happy and joyous. When did I realize this? I never realized that I would want to share those things with anybody because then they wouldn't like me. And I think it was really in this program the first time I did a 4-step and a 5th step, and I actually shared my stuff, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, me too." That I realized, man, there's a lot of power in that sharing that stuff. So that was really good. And it talked about how they felt after the 5th step. And I've always, I've done at least maybe 6 or 8 5th steps. And every time I've done the 5th step, I've felt that, that relief afterwards, that freedom from bondage. This time I didn't. And maybe because I'm tired of relapsing. I'm tired of going around and around and around. And so I'm just maybe a little cautious. But usually I have felt that way. And then the last line here, it talks about, I found that God could do for me what I couldn't do myself. And my thought was, if I let him. Pretty self-reliant. So anyway, that's my take on that topic. I really like the idea of freedom. What is freedom? Why do we want it? What do we want freedom from? That kind of thing. So what is freedom? All right. Good definition is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants to without hindrance and restraints. I can do what I want, say what I want, be who I want, and not have to feel like there's something that's binding me. And that's what alcohol and drugs does, is it binds me, right? It holds me captive. So what do I want to be free from? I want to be free from the power of alcohol. I'd love to be free from at least most of my character defects. Economic insecurity. I want to be free of caring what anybody thinks of me. From that feeling of uselessness and self-pity that goes along with it. From self-seeking. Really, I want to be free from anything that doesn't revolve around peace, love, patience, tolerance. You can kind of tell if it's not good. And so I'm going to be referencing a lot of AA literature here. 12 by 12 of step 12, it says, we found that freedom from fear was more important than freedom from want. And that's interesting, because it's easy to say I want to be free from my desires and want all these things, but it's just an interesting concept. So why don't we experience freedom? I think it's because we're either too self-reliant, we need to control too many things, we're selfish. But right here, it says in the 12 by 12 book, step 7, page 76, it talks about the chief activator of our defects has been self-centered fear. Primarily fear that we would lose something we already possessed, or would fail to get something we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration, not free. It's pretty good stuff there. So what's the results if we don't, if we're not free? If we don't try to pursue that? And how it works, page 67 of the big book. This is right after the step 4. It says, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. Do you want to keep living that way? I don't want to keep living that way. And it also says, we will continue to be restless, irritable, and discontented. I keep getting what I'm keep getting. If I keep doing what I've always been doing, right? So, what are some ways to achieve freedom? What does the literature say? So, and how it works in the big book, page 62, and it's right before step 3. It says, he is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So this is the step 2, belief in a power greater than ourselves to restore us to sanity. So by taking that step, we don't have to control everything, right? So there's freedom right there. And it talks about Into Action, chapter Into Action, page 87 in the big book, around step 7. It says, we ask for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. So here's a prayer to God to ask for that freedom. Here's what do we typically want and what would we ask for? And freedom's a pretty good one, I think. And the last one here talks about is 12 book, step 7, and practicing humility. So it is that we first see humility as a necessity, but this is the barest beginning, to get completely away from our aversion to the idea of being humble, to gain a vision of humility as the avenue to true freedom of this human spirit. So I guess what I'm taking from here is practicing step 7, surrendering those defects of character to your higher power, and that's being humble in the process. And by doing that, we become free from them. If we don't want to let them go, we're not going to be free if we're not willing. So anyway, that's kind of what I got out of today's reading. Just want to encourage you to, how free are you? What are you willing to do to achieve that freedom? And what's holding you back? What are you not free from that you'd like to be? If you identify some things that you're not free from, what are you going to do about it? It's always a course of action, and a higher power is a good way to look at it. So anyway, that's all I got for today. Be back tomorrow for another podcast. So until tomorrow, peace out.